We have 11 o'clock here. We'll go ahead and get started. It's so great to see all of you. The three of us are joining you here from the Stark County ESC. I'm here with my good friend Amanda. Do you want to say anything, Amanda, to get going?
Oh, hi, everybody. We're excited to be here with you.
Jen is here as always too. Jen, do you want to say anything?
Well, just good morning. Great to see you.
Good morning, and I'm Matthew. As always, wonderful to see all of you. We have some good things to share. Again, one more time before we really get rolling, if you check the discussion, you'll see that all of the important links have been shared, just the same as what you see in the top right-hand corner of this first slide. So as we're thinking about our meeting today, we have 4 different areas. Hopefully we can get to all 4. The first of which, we're just going to set the table, show you some resources like we usually do. In the second section, my friends here are going to share some really important literacy items for you. In the third section, I'm going to share a few timely tools, some things that are happening that I think you might like or might be able to help you in your current role. And if we have time, then we will go to some breakout. So with that being said, we mentioned the meeting resources. I won't do that again. If you have yet to do so, please make sure that you log your attendance. That is what's going to get you your certificate for today. And then the slide link there is going to get you all of the links and other helpful things that are shared throughout the rest of the presentation. We mention this pretty much at every meeting as well. This is not just a bi-monthly meeting. We want this to be an ongoing, continuing conversation as the howling through our office. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but everything turned on. It was wild. So back to our slides here for a moment. We have a website and it is loaded with lots of really great resources for you. We also have our Google group. That is not just an email chain. If you go to groups within your Google Waffle or your apps launcher or whatever you call it, that will take you to groups. We want that to be an ongoing conversation. Don't hold your questions until the next time we meet. You can put those questions through our chat and then receive help from your fellow coaches, from our leaders of this group. We are here to help you. So please make sure that that is a continuing, ongoing conversation. We'd really love to see that. Okay. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Amanda, who is going to talk a little bit about literacy.
Okay, everyone. So I'm going to share this an update on our ACE network that we have for K-5 in Stark County. I had some conversations with Jen about this and thought maybe it was a timely time to share. I'm not going to go really, really far in the weeds with this because I know we have people from Tri-County who haven't been involved in this particular grant. You have had other grants out your way, but I wanted to share some resources that are connected to this work primarily. And I want you just at the outset here to be thinking about how you could do something similar as an instructional coach as you organize your own materials for coaching, possibly how you could adapt the form that I'm going to share with you today, and we'll talk more about that in just a moment. Just know, as I'm talking about this, if you are a tech coach, if you are somebody who supports secondary students, you're going to see some examples here that are focused more on K-5. So for those of you who coach at that level, you'll have some things you can take and use immediately. If you don't, there's going to be some innovation involved in taking this and kind of taking the structure and the approach and considering how you might do this with your material and the things that you're coaching around. So just to set the table a little bit. So whoops, I'm not used to your mouse.
Just this one we can hear.
Perfect. I would bypass.
Yes.
Okay, so many of you have seen the literacy improvement pathway. Really at the heart of what I'm going to share with you today is this idea that we have to know what we're teaching, right? And consider what we're teaching and when and how and all those pieces. And also that quality of instruction, that there's a process, there's some fidelity aspects to what we're asking teachers to do. And that's really what we're addressing as coaches. Are you really using the strategy, or have you taken some aspects of it and adapted it to a point where maybe it's not recognizable or is effective, right? And trying to find that middle ground and moving people towards fidelity where it needs to be. So as part of our great work, we have a teacher from 18 of our 22 districts who's been designated as an ACE educator. Perhaps some of you have been working with your ACE reps. And if you have, I would just love for you to drop that into the chat if you've had conversations in TVTs, if you've done professional development alongside of them or engaged in any conversations around this ACE work and you're a Stark County coach. I'd love for you just to say, I worked with my ACE rep in the chat so we can see if that level of collaboration is occurring yet. But essentially, this work has been aligned with all of the other work that we've been doing as a region and as a state. So we've been focused on Ohio's plan to raise literacy achievement. We've been focused on the science of reading, these 5 pillars of literacy from the National Reading Panel and so forth. Next year, we're going to be scaling that up to 612. We'll have another group of ACE teachers who will be working with us and really focusing on implementation in a way that our lead educator networks have not quite engaged in. They have some complementary but different roles. And so the resources that I'm going to share with you will just sort of show the scope and sequence of our work and how it's sort of anchored in some of these things that you see in the state's plan. And so some of you may be familiar with this graphic, a shifting emphasis. I color coded it a little bit here because we've decided to use a color coding system for our resources as we're sharing them out. So you'll see, phonemic awareness is red, phonics and word studies yellow, and so forth. And really, this is just showing that although we are teaching, fluency, K and beyond, the nature of that instruction looks a little bit different, right? Although we're teaching vocabulary beginning in kindergarten all the way through 12th grade, the emphasis shifts a little bit. The way that we teach it shifts a little bit. And so as we started working with teachers and we've been providing some coaching and support, we really wanted to create a database of resources to use and some tools to support them that reflected this. So if you look at this next slide, this is at the top, that same kind of scope and sequence, looking from kindergarten to mid-first to second, third grade and beyond. What is the emphasis that you saw reflected on that previous graphic? So we saw blending and segmentation in kindergarten to mid-first, phoneme analysis, et cetera, and mid-first through second. And then in third grade and beyond, the emphasis is really shifting to spelling dictation. Are you able to spell the words? And it's less focused in tier 1 on those PA activities if our students have sufficient PA. It hasn't been identified as a tier 1 issue. So I guess the point is, with each of those ranges, with that different shifting emphasis, what we tried to do was select strategies that could be used across a building, across a district to address those needs. So you'll notice in kindergarten through mid-first, we have Say It, Move It, and Elkonin boxes with tokens. And our thinking was, moving from Say It, Move It, where there's a big box and you're just moving the tokens and thinking about the sounds as a starting point, we could move them into using Elkonin boxes where each of those tokens go into a distinct place. So there's some one-to-one correspondence that we're beginning to build. There's a sound for each box. Eventually, we have some resources that we pulled together in the phonics slide where we start introducing those letters to the Elkonin boxes. And you can start to see some finger spelling pieces here. And you can see that reflected on these slides too. So we move from that big box and just pulling those tokens down and manipulating the phonemes to giving each of those phonemes a place, right? A home, that one-to-one correspondence for the sounds in the word cat. And then from there, we were also addressing, finger tapping as a way to move away from those templates and using that as a structure that could aid in dictation. And all of these resources will be available to you in this meeting, by the way. So then looking at phonics and word study, you see a scope and sequence here too. I'm not going to go through everything super in depth in the interest of time, but you can see it follows that same scope and sequence on that shifting emphasis document. And you can see where we start to shift into Alconin boxes with letters. This is like that next step in that gradual release. And we start to fold in voting, grapheme mapping. We start to see more emphasis on that transfer to text process. So we're using these phonics skills and applying it within our texts. And then you see dictation here emphasized as well. But notice that in 3rd grade and beyond, we also introduced syllable boxes and morpheme boxes, because phonics instruction and word study starts to shift more at that level to those multisyllabic patterns, to looking at morphemes in words and that those meaningful parts as well. There's also a different method for reading decodable text that we introduced to our ACE teachers at that level as well, because the text contains so many more patterns and become closer to what we would consider an authentic, just typical text or trade book. The way that you introduce a text, the questions that you ask about that text are qualitatively different than what we're doing when our emphasis is at more of the basic level with that transfer to text process. So that's something I tell you to take a look at later if you teach those levels. So you see here just sort of that progression again, moving from Alconin boxes with letters to phoneme grapheme mapping and more of a grid where we're looking at multiple words, maybe multiple patterns there, as you see with those bossy R patterns, moving into syllable boxes and morpheme boxes. So there's a continuum of skills that we're building in that gives teachers flexibility within the classroom and across grade levels. It makes it easier to share. And you can see here too, those 2 different decodable text routines side by side. And note, again, the one on the left is a little bit less complex than the one on the right, which takes into consideration the complexity of the text and the grade level of the students. We also have some resources in there for dictation, different forms that might be used, again, depending on the grade level and needs as a starting point. And then we also talked about fluency so far. So again, at each grade level, we're looking at accuracy, automaticity, and prosody. But this is at various levels, which we'll look at on the next slide. Some of the strategies we've been emphasizing with our teachers are fluency drills, repeated oral reading, partner reading, phrase cued reading, and reader's theater. And as you can see on this slide, the way that we've been talking about this is, fluency isn't just reading a passage accurately and with automaticity and with prosody. There is fluency involved in letter sound correspondences, right? There's automaticity that we want to start to see with that, which then builds up to that grapheme level and the morpheme level and those words and the sentence level and the text level. And it's all very recursive because we're constantly introducing new patterns, new morphemes, more complex vocabulary, more complex sentence structure, more complex text. But all the while, we are helping them refine their accuracy at each of these levels, helping them to become more automatic at each of these levels, and helping them to read with sufficient expression with that grade level text. Really recognizing, again, that fluency is that bridge between word recognition and language comprehension. So just for some context, we've spent the fall working on word recognition. Our ACE teachers have engaged in some of the same practices we've asked you all to engage in over the years. So they've selected a strategy to really spend some time refining. They've recorded lessons and watched themselves and submitted reflections. We haven't asked them to share their videos with us, but they have submitted some reflections on their teaching. The first time they did that without a checklist. The second time we had them do another video after reflecting, and that time we gave them some look-fors for each of these strategies to just really help them think through how they could continue to implement these strategies with fidelity. And so you'll see, first of all, this is the spreadsheet. It's a live link, so you can click actually on this image. It'll take you to the spreadsheet. You'll notice that there are tabs across the bottom for each of those 5 components, and they're color-coded. To the right of the comprehension tab, there's a tab for look-fors.
Just go there.
Yeah, Matt's gonna navigate us there. Sorry. So, so you'll notice at the top of each of these pages, I created an overview. So most of them start at Reading Rockets with a module, a free module of what is this domain. And I also tucked in a couple resources there that provide sort of an overview. And then you'll see sections for each of those strategies that we've given our teachers to select from. And there are videos modeling what that looks like. There are reproducible handouts that they can use. There are digital resources. There's just a wealth of things that we'll continue to add. You can see we have the same thing for each of the domains, so phonics and word studies there, multiple different avenues. And then we have fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. And at the far right, what I was pointing out is the look fors. So right now we just have look for documents that are aligned with each of these strategies for that word recognition side, because that's what we have had them reflect on. And we're starting to go out to classrooms and do some observations and provide some feedback to this group of teachers. So we'll be using these documents, and we're going to be creating some look for documents for all of those word recognition for all of the language comprehension strategies as well this spring. So by the end of the year, for everything that's in this document, we'll also have some of these checklists. Now, I share this with you because of two reasons. One, if you work with K-5 teachers, I want you to have access to this so you can use it in any way that you see fit. Hopefully this gives you a starting point for building your own resource bank or your instructional coaching toolkit, expanding that one that you already have. The other reason I wanted to share it with you is because I think it can be easily adapted. You know, you can feel free to make a copy of what I have, change it to your school colors, fold in some of the resources that you're already using with teachers, and make it your own, right? If you are a tech coach or a high school, middle school coach, you know, the structure, which Matt actually initially created for us, is really, really flexible. I've been able to do a lot with this across various networks over the course of the year. So it's really malleable. And hopefully, again, this gives you just a starting point for thinking about how you can easily share these resources with others. On the next slide, I just wanted to briefly share a look for document. And if it'll show up for me. Go back for a second. I think there might be a delay. Am I skipping it? Oh, there it is. Okay, so this is what the front page of one of the look for documents look like. You can see here that this is Elkonin boxes with tokens. We have a list of the materials that they'll need, and I broke that into what the students would need and what the teacher would need. And then I have some look fors along that left side. The rectangles, the really tall, skinny ones that you see, we're just sort of we're coloring that in using the fill feature in Google. So rather than actually being a checklist, you know, you could use a highlighter or a marker to kind of fill it in or put a check mark if you printed it. But if you're using it digitally, we're just filling it in with black to show that we observed that step. And then we have a place for notes as well. So this is a starting point. We're going to refine these documents. What we've noticed is, although I said most of our ACE teachers have not submitted videos because we haven't asked that of them, there are a few individuals that we have talked to who have a higher comfort level with that, who have submitted videos to us. And we've done some coaching based on the videos they submitted. For one particular teacher, she was working on the Elkonin boxes with tokens. We gave her feedback on this form. So again, kind of filling in that tall, skinny row or column, showing what they had done, what they had actually addressed. And we filled in the notes and we realized, well, that really wasn't enough. How can we provide her with a little bit more structure moving forward? So I'm going to share what we did. And I'm happy to share these documents with anybody who's interested. You can feel free to email, or we'll try to drop it into our folder for coaching or attach them here. But basically, based on what we were seeing with that checklist, basically that part of the lesson was taking 18 minutes. It was an 18-minute video for the Elkonin boxes, which is a bit long in the grand scheme of things. So we gave her this sample script that we created really briefly, just taking that standard structure for this kind of a lesson. We used a couple of the words that she used in that lesson to really make it concrete for her. And then I also made the second page with some additional considerations based on some of the things I was seeing in that lesson. So there wasn't really a gradual release of responsibility. So we kind of provided some feedback there and some examples of what that might look like. We had some other things there just for some guidance around scaffolds regarding the use of tokens and mirrors, because it was pretty clear to me that the kids didn't need it. And it was really bogging down the process for this particular pattern that they were working on. So I just added some extra information here about when would we use them and when would we not. And then some extra context here, like remember this Elkonin box routine fits within this whole phonics lesson framework, which should be 30 minutes. So 18 minutes is getting a little long within the grand scheme of things. So we try to provide a little bit more of that scope and where are we going with this and how should this build and flow into that next lesson component. Now I share this because, I think our roles are not so different in some ways. We're all trying to support a lot of people and we're all trying to pull all these resources together. And so often I get asked the same questions over and over again. I'm sure you guys see some of the same things where one person needs this thing, but then later you're going to have somebody else have the same need. And it may not be the same week, it may be the next year, but it's going to come up again, right? So I sometimes don't always have the capacity to do this level of support, but when I do, I try to prioritize it and I try to nest it somewhere where other people can use it, which is again, another reason why I'm sharing it today. So just consider if you do use a spreadsheet like ours, if you make a copy of it or innovate it for your purposes, for tech support or whatever it is that you do in your role, think about how you can then fold some of these additional things that you create to support teachers into that existing document to keep the work moving forward. I guess I'll pause here and just let anybody ask a question. And then I'm going to turn it over to Jen and she's going to kind of build on what I've been talking about and share just more of a systems lens on this. So before we do that, does anybody have any questions or comments about how you can see yourself using this or adapting it for your coaching purposes? You can feel free to put something in the chat too. Alicia?
I just said thank you for sharing.
Oh, thanks. No problem. All right, Jen, if there aren't any questions, I'll let you
Oh, that's okay. I only have one. So okay. No worries. You can keep it over there. And I will try to keep this brief because I know Matt has some really great things that even I can't wait. I always can't wait to hear what he has to say because he makes all of our lives easier and better. So we're so thankful for that. And I know we want to have time for breakouts as well. But honestly, we just want to honor the role that you play. And Amanda just touched on it briefly. A lot of your work goes down to supporting all of those individual classroom teachers and grade levels and buildings. But your role is incredibly valuable in also supporting the systems level work as well. And we know, again, some of you are instructional coaches, some of you are peer coaches, and some of you have administrative roles as well. And you're also supporting beyond literacy in many cases. But we just want to revisit it really briefly. Again, the power of connecting your teachers in the role you play, again, to that bigger why and that bigger collective we, and our state plans, that includes, of course, our state literacy plan, and again, that collective why. So you'll see a link to the bottom. I know most of us have probably seen this, but I continue to bring us back to Ohio's plan to raise literacy achievement. And again, those series of action that we really have evidence and that really best support using literacy as that lever for continuous school improvement. So we're thinking about the areas specifically of educator capacity, of shared leadership and multi-tiered systems of support, as well as family engagement and community collaboration. So as coaches, you all have really, really strong roles in that. And I know that Educator capacity tends to be that primary place you land, but especially as we move forward with the dyslexia legislation and the implementation of all that fantastic learning we're doing, we know that assessment is going to have a greater role than it's had before. And your voices and expertise are going to be so critical within all your shared leadership structures. Again, creating those true multi-tiered systems of support to not only support your students, but to support your teachers. As we really get diagnostic and prescriptive using all the great tools that, Amanda and her team and Beth and Jennifer over in Tri-County are really putting together to make sure, again, you're supported and the teachers that you're working with are supported too. I always have to say I'm also super excited always about the family engagement and community collaboration potential. So we'll get to that in a moment here when we talk about the Regional Literacy Network. But we just want to bring you back again. Amanda shared those really specific examples, but as you're creating that literacy system of support, we want to remind you of those bigger tools that are available to you. So again, our Regional Coaching Network has a Google Classroom where you can access the Gym Night modules. So again, whether we're talking about impact cycles, and you might really be, again, partnering with an ACE teacher or people who've done really in-depth learning here, and you kind of want to remind yourself what those cycles look like. Better conversations, right? As we move into some of this professional learning, we know that some of you have been engaged in letters training or the top 10 tools, but we also know that we have teachers entering into using, Ohio's Introduction to Dyslexia course. And this is new learning, right? And there's some cognitive dissonance that we're working through. So sometimes those better conversation, coaching prompts and reminders are helpful for us all. And, reminding us of the humanness of the work that we're doing. And, we're talking a lot about the science of reading, but there's just this beautiful art to teaching as well. And that's why you all are in the roles that you're in, is because you can navigate those things really beautifully and maintain, again, that implementation and fidelity to that Amanda was talking about, while also honoring where people are in their journey as adult learners as well. So speaking of that, again, just a reminder that we all have access to ODE's Introduction to Dyslexia course. Again, we have some more things that are coming down the pike as well. There will be that Introduction to Dyslexia course for grades 4 through 12. And then there will be a phonics course coming from ODE as well down the line here in alignment with the new phonics rule. So we're really looking forward to having those things available. We have had a phenomenal opportunity in our region to be a part of so many different grants. So Striving Readers and the Early Literacy Ohio work and SSIP and all kinds of things. But what I'm so thankful for in this is that, every educator in Ohio has equitable access to this learning for the first time. And that is just a really exciting thing. We don't have to purchase licenses, right? Not only is it free, but again, it's that ongoing piece. So you can go back and visit things in pieces and parts. You all can pull videos, resources in alignment to the data that you're going to be seeing. So again, even if you've been letters trained or if you've had that top 10 tools work, if you're seeing a pattern come up in those questions from your teachers and you think, what, we might want to recalibrate this or revisit it or hear it in a different way, just remember that is a tool that you have available to you, and everything's broken down by modules, so you can go in and have some access to those great resources. They're chunked out really nicely, I think, time-wise as well. So that can be a really strong asset to you as you're really supporting those shared leadership structures in your building and in your district. Again, the learning management system also has those instructional and peer coaching modules. So we want to remind you that those are available as that bigger system of support. And so those are available, no matter what role you play, but there are some really great literacy specific examples that I want to make sure that you're aware of. Again, people who have worked with pilots and truly have built literacy systems. I think it's really important that you get to hear some of those real life examples from people who have done that work. Again, a lot of us have requested continuing conversation around the administrator-coach partnership piece. And there's some really good information within those LMS modules to support you in those conversations. And then finally, we want to just remind you that you are all invited to be participants in our regional literacy network. I've linked here to the YouTube channel where Matt so graciously just puts recordings of all of our meetings. So I know that it's difficult to protect time in our roles, and we all understand that more than anybody, right? We're straddling lots of different responsibilities. So we just want you to know that that's available for you. If you can't attend in person, you can get kind of the heartbeat of what that conversation sounds like. And I know from a universal design standpoint, I love that you can pause if you need to pause, you can rewind and listen again. You can have it on in the background if you need to, if you're working on something else. So again, just another level of support that we want to provide for you. We also know, as sometimes playing the only role in your district, it's just helpful to hear what questions other people have, you know, so you can navigate those things that are coming up with your teachers as well. And we can kind of talk about how we answer those things and the other supports that are available to help you in that. We can also drop the registration link for the Regional Literacy Network in the chat. If you haven't yet registered for that, it's never too late. We're always happy to have you join us. Okay, so
And the next meeting is
The next-
February
9th,
Yeah.
I believe it's on a Thursday, and I think we have it on a slide coming up here later, but we have 2 more meetings. So Thursday, February 9th, and then I feel like April 13th is in my head, but we'll visit that on a later slide and make sure we're right.
I did want to add one more thing Jen and I talked about yesterday, as we were talking through this, you know, as you process perhaps again, that spreadsheet that I shared with you, and as we think about systems, right? I think an important consideration, even if you don't work with K-5 literacy teachers and you're trying to replicate this in some way for your own resources, what we were discussing is how it comes down to building a system and having some consistency across classrooms and buildings across the district, right? And so how do we connect all of these things in our PD, right? So I'm using this, I am using that spreadsheet. It's connected to the PD I deliver. It's connected to the ACE network specifically, but it's also connected to lead educators. I'm having conversations with you all, right? We're helping to facilitate some conversations in some TBTs at the grade level, right? We're trying to facilitate conversations both directions now. Reach out to your ACE if you're from one of our districts, right? From coaches to these teachers. We're facilitating conversations with principals. It takes all of us having these common conversations and really thinking about, once I've learned something, once I've been exposed to it in the PD, once you've exposed your teachers to some of these concepts, how do we follow through to make sure that they haven't just learned about it, but they're actually beginning to use it, and that they're beginning to use it flexibly. And that's really where some of those strategies that we pulled into our spreadsheet came to be. Because it's not enough just to say, here's an Alconin box to use. We really felt it was necessary to start having conversations about, when do I use this? And when do I use tokens? And when do I use letters? And when do I transition away to that and start moving them towards phonography mapping, and then the syllable level, and then the morpheme level, so that people start to understand the flexibility and the growth that occurs across all of these different instructional strategies, and that they could use them with different groups of students to meet different needs in response to the data that we have. So I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to sum that up real quick.
Yeah, no, I think that we just don't necessarily within shared leadership structures think about this as being something that can truly help us be more data driven. But again, you know, as you feed back into the system as coaches, you know, that feedback to your principals and to your district curriculum teams, you know, about, you know, what you're seeing in classrooms. And, you know, it could be something like, yes, we need these look-fors. I know we need to focus implementation here, but it can also be, maybe we're seeing a lack of instructional materials in this area, right? Or, you know, those things are going to be incredibly valuable. And then again, when you take that feedback aligned to, you know, the benchmark data that you're going to have, you know, from our dyslexia screeners, you know, it's really, really going to help to make sure that communication and feedback loop is really really solidified. And again, not only focused on that 5-step process for the bigger school improvement piece, but it's really, really tied to those evidence-based strategies that we know are aligned to our reading brain and are going to help kids really make great growth and progress in their learning. So it's exciting.
Good for us.
That's all right. Any other questions, comments before we continue on here? So this is all wonderful. This is probably the second or third time I've heard Amanda speak about a lot of the things. And like what I appreciate most is that it's the same message that's being shared, right? You don't have to do the code switch of like, oh, I'm talking to science teachers and now I'm talking to math teachers and now I'm talking to social studies. It's the same conversation and it's wonderful. So shout out to you both. You're doing amazing things. Any other questions, comments before we move on? Okay. All right, so the last time we met, it was the season of giving. We talked about a couple of different tech resources, and now we're in that new year. So new year, new you, lots of fun things that you can do to kind of take control of your work or help teachers to take care of themselves as they look at 2023. So the first tip that I have for you is removing the clutter. And so I am a person that everything has a place and it will go into that place, and that's where I know to find it, whether that's both in a physical space or like in my brain. That's how I pack things away. And one of the things I wanted to share with you is a set of brain dump templates from Canva. So remember from November when we last spoke, if you're not using Canva, it's free for you. You get everything start to finish. There's a search up in the very top that you can put literally anything you want to, and it will come up with resources for you. So if you type in the word brain dump, or if you click on the link that I have for you on that slide, there's some really awesome tools that are pre-made for you that you can either customize with your district colors or with names, and either use these for your own work or to hand off to teachers who may be struggling with some of these things, or even with students who may be struggling with organization. So, as an example, here is one where like, I just need to put some good things. Here's what I need to take care of at home. Here's what I need to take care of at work. And these are some personal items for me. Here are the projects that I currently have brewing at the moment. Here are just some other random things that I need to unpack out of my brain, and here are just some random notes. So again, that layout is all taken care of for you. It is just a place to put it. So this one I really like too. This is just a straight up task list. It also has these kind of priority circles for you. So you can see a high, a medium, or a low priority. And it is unbelievably satisfying to check things off of your list. So they give you kind of that done area. And what I appreciate about this one too is it even gives you that, like, how does this sheet work, or what can this do for you kind of type thing. So I really like that one. And then you'll see a whole bunch of other ones that are all very simple and beautiful and easy for you to, like I said, manipulate and either use for yourself or, share with students and teachers who may need that too. So, just taking control of the clutter, whether that be, like I said, physically on your desk space or in a classroom, or unpacking those things in your brain. Like I always feel like I have a million things going, and very recently I've been forgetting a lot of them. That is apparently what my wife is telling me. So she is very keen to remind me of those things, and if I just had some kind of helpful brain dump thing, I wouldn't have to worry about that, and that would be helpful. So I need to start using those myself. So removing the clutter, really great tool here for the start of your 2023. The other thing I wanted to talk about is choice board. So if you're unfamiliar with her, Casey Bell is a super nerd here in the educational tech community. She has a bunch of wonderful resources. If you look in the speaker notes area, I even dropped a link to some of her items. but she offers up 6 steps for using choice boards. And so I linked that here for you. Really nicely laid out kind of, process here of how you would execute those within a classroom and some of those considerations that you need to keep in mind as you're building these, like I said, either for your own use or to use with someone else. Again, we are going to hop out over here to Canva. I'm sorry, it's too helpful and too easy to use and customize to see some of these choice boards. So, very simple. I can come in, I can customize the wording on any of these. We see one here. This is a phonics choice board. So, if you like one or some of these, you can keep them. If you want to move them around, you can do that too. Customize all of the wording, that may be in there as well.
Make them a little more explicit.
Yeah, exactly. I'd say they're pretty generic. But yeah, again, that's just coming up to the search bar and typing in choice board, and those will pop up for you. So like I said, if you have yet to bounce around on Casey Bell's website, there's so many wonderful things there that she has just in the tech space that I think could be very helpful for you. There is a text that I've been looking at a lot recently. It's called Inclusive Learning 365. So the idea is, and we often joke here in our office, it's a strategy a day, right? So we have like a dad joke calendar where, somebody will peel it and read the dad joke to everybody. This is the same premise, except that it is with inclusive ed tech strategies. What I like about this, though, if you wanted to get the book, I want to say it's right around $25 to $30. I gave you an Amazon link if it was something that you're interested in. But they have a really nice companion website. And when you visit the companion website, they have even more resources. So all the things that you're reading about or that you're learning about as you read through the text, you can come here and you can actually see those things, or you can manipulate those items for yourself. So as an example, if you got to the section on reading, you could come here, and then it outlines all of the additional strategies. So here's strategy 98 through 156 in our calendars, and as you select it, it kind of gives you a breakdown of what they're discussing. So strategy 152 talks about Kami, it talks about Digigo, something called Claro software, a little portfolio, and then there are little individual resources that are a part of it as well. A lot of these are ready to go. Many of them are templates that you can then take and manipulate. So they may be, for a Google Doc, or they may be for, something else. But it is really easy, really accessible. And, like I said, you don't have to buy the book to get all of these things. They do a nice job of basically kind of giving you an overview of what that strategy might be. And, most of you are curious enough that you can figure out what those topics may be, even without having, read that text. So a really nice free way to get a lot of the benefit of that text without actually buying the book. So as terrible as that sounds, they put it out there, it's all for free. So we might as well take advantage of wonderful free resources as well. Okay, and then the last thing that I wanted to talk about, if you have not heard about it quite yet, ChatGPT is having a moment. If you wouldn't mind, either by the little hand raise button or into the chat, if you wouldn't mind either raising your hand or just in the chat saying I've heard of GPT or I have used GPT, that would be helpful for me. I know Natalie has seen it. We spoke at the last ILC meeting about it, but ChatGPT is having a moment. So essentially what this is, it is artificial intelligence that is, how do I word it? It is at this moment already more powerful and more useful than your general Google search. So if you wanted to, you could come to ChatGPT, you could ask it questions, just like what you have been trained to do since, we were all arguing over what the best search engine was, Yahoo or Ask Jeeves or Dogpile or, all the other ones when they were coming about. And it's going to give you really specific answers. But the trick behind ChatGPT is that it can do even more. So yes, it can answer, simple, complex questions. It can also write and debug code. It can also manage and manipulate data. It can also tutor. Are you hearing about this for the first time? You're giving me the eyes like, holy cow, this is.
Well, I'm connecting it to other things that it could be useful for, that I didn't think of before.
Perfect. So in the example over here on the side, I kind of put on my coaching hat and I said, hey, I have a first year teacher and I just want to send them an email of encouragement. So you'll notice that up in the top, I just said, compose an email encouraging a struggling first year teacher. That's it. And from that prompt, it produced that email. So you'll notice it says, dear, and then, in those carrots, teacher name, and then it goes on and on and on, and it produces this really wonderful and inspiring computer generated email that you can easily customize and put into your Gmail and blast it off to this teacher. After speaking with Natalie at our most recent ILC meeting, we know that it will also do lesson plans. It will do like slides. It will do all kinds of unbelievably awesome and amazing things. I've heard it in use a couple different times, even with like scripts. So you could say something along the lines of like, I want you to do a movie review of Jurassic Park in the style of Siskel and Ebert, and it'll do it. It'll produce an exact script. First Siskel says this, then Ebert says that, then Siskel says this, and Ebert says that. 2 thumbs up at the very end, and it is an exact replica, an exact model of that. Now, for you, for your teachers, if you have not tried this yet, or if you have not worked with this yet, the initial knee-jerk reaction is, kids are going to use this cheaty. They are going to put in, write a prompt about, or write a 2-paragraph response to Charlotte's Web in the style of a 3rd grader, and it'll write it as if it's a 3rd grader. That's the initial reaction that teachers are going to have. There are so many unbelievably helpful things that ChatGPT could do for a classroom that would not necessarily be used in nefarious ways. I told you before, I'm the kid that colors outside the lines. That's what makes me good at my job, is I think about all of those kids in class who are trying to go around, different avenues. But using the resources that I have put on this slide for you, where it says learn more with these resources, basically is I find things online of people discussing ChatGPT for educational purposes. I've been compiling those and putting them into this folder. Again, this is just my folder, so take that for what it's worth. There are a ton of help guides out there trying to navigate you through, the experience. There's this slide deck is really helpful. And then this one here is really nice. This is from Evan Dunn. Basically, he goes through a bunch of different things. So, you get the step-by-step guide of this is how it actually works if you've never done it before. Just some like keywords and things that you can use. And then I've been scrolling really fast because I think he has a bunch of like really helpful prompts down here at the bottom. So here's some sample prompts that you can do as a teaching tool. So generate a set of reading comprehension questions for a passage on this. And you can actually take whatever that text is, type it directly in there, and it will do those comprehension questions for you. You can see like group topics for, people at specific ages, practice problems, different exercises, even just different examples. Create a set of vocabulary flashcards for, and you can either put in what that topic is, or you can put in like actual text that you want it to, to generate from. But I mean, the power of GPT is pretty mind-blowing. Now, I did notice that in the chat, a couple people were saying like it's been difficult to get to. Know that GPT at the moment, or this version, this iteration that I'm talking about, is still in beta mode. So the AI is up to 2021. So if you were to ask it something like, who won the 2022 Soccer World Cup, it doesn't know that answer. It knows the world and everything that has been happening up until 2021, because that's when they initially launched this. Now, this is also currently free for you to use. I suspect that that will change when this whole beta thing is finished. But this isn't the only version, right? So we've been talking with chatbots for the last 5 to 10 years. It's the same premise. When you go to Amazon and you have a problem with your package and you say, hey, it was destroyed en route to my house, you're talking with a chatbot. You're not talking with an actual person. When you use ChatGPT and it looks as if it's, typing this, really elaborate response, it did that in an instant. It's only typing it out on the screen because we as humans would be freaked out knowing that this thing was generated in a nanosecond, right? It's more comforting to us if we're actually seeing those things, kind of typed out and the flow is coming through them. So know that. Also know that it has the potential to lie to you. So some of the things that it puts forward may not in fact be factual, which is like, I think, a help to teachers and to, people who will be using it. Because it's not this, all-knowing being, like it still has errors. It still needs that human touch in order to be really, really effective.
Yeah, that was what I was going to bring up when Natalie shared some of her experiences with us at our ILC meeting. It made me process everything differently a second time here, thinking I would never just put in a prompt for a lesson and take that and use it with a student, right? None of us would. But what Natalie said at that meeting that is helping me process this is it gives you a starting point. We've all been in that place where our brains are fried and we just need to get started on something. So I think it's really powerful for that, getting started, having something to start with, and then bringing our expertise and our curriculum and our students to bear on that refinement process. So just something else.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I mentioned a couple things about it before. Know that for the newest version of like all of your Microsoft products, so Word and Excel and PowerPoint, they have a version of this that is built in that will just be a part of all of those products from now until the end of time. If you are a Canva user, right, you've heard me talk about that a lot, they have a version of this as well. They call it Magic Write. So as you're building, they call theirs docs. So as you're building their docs, you can have Magic Write, start those prompts for you or write those paragraphs for you. They are ready to go. ChatGPT is not the first. It's also not going to be the last. So as you're hearing students, who are using it or teachers who are using it, you may hear people say like, oh, well, I don't use that one. I use this instead. It is really going to be on all of us as educators to look at, all of the AI opportunities that are about to unfold with a really critical eye. There are going to be copycats. There are going to be duplicates. They will not be as helpful, as truthful, as, I guess, like above the line, like on the up and up as what this is. And I'm even saying that with some hesitation. There are going to be places that, will use something like this to steal people's information. And people are going to give them their credit card and all of these other terrible, awful things. So know that like we are literally like at the tip of the iceberg with all of this. This, in my opinion, is going to radically change how we do everything, not just in school, but everything. It's going to take the human element out of a lot, but it's our job to infuse that human element back into everything that, you know, AI is about to take care of for us. So with that, I do want to open it up. I know that there were some really great things happening in the chat. Does anyone want to unmute, maybe talk about some ways that you have used it in the past, or just some general comments or questions?